Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4 Episode 5, Parth Ferengi's Heart Place. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Lower Decks, so I have to start with the spoiler warning for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4 Episode 6. If you have not seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, I liked this episode. I thought it was pretty intriguing. It was pretty interesting. I don't think it's quite as good as last week's episode. I want to move. Last week's episode, I said I gave it a 9. I want to move it up to a 10. I think this is one of the best episodes of the entire show. But this week's episode is good. It is, but I don't think it was that good. But it was still, I don't know. It wasn't as funny, for first of all, and secondly, I'm a bit iffy about it. Like, there's some things I really like, and some things I kind of like, and I think they should have done more, and some things I think were like maybe a bit repetitive. But anyway, first of all, getting into what I really liked, I liked exploring Ferengi as a planet. I like going there and seeing the really different complexities of it, and that it, sure, they all play into the stereotype about profit and everything, but they show a bit more sort of difference in between. Like, you get the biker Ferengi, you get the all the different kind of Ferengi. You have the television show that Boimler were watching. It kind of reminded me a lot of movies like Lost in Translation or whatnot, that are from the perspective of an American visiting a foreign country like Japan, or something like that, where this is from the perspective of Starfleet visiting Ferengi, and how it's similar but a different culture, and and so that aspect of it I really liked. I thought it was really interesting. Maybe, I don't know if I would say, I didn't think it was outright hilarious, but there were definitely some funny moments in that. But yeah, let me start with the storyline with Rom and Lita. This is the one I was kind of iffy about. Now, I know some people may not see things the way I see things, and they may be like, come up with explanations of why my perspective is wrong or whatever, but I can't help having this perspective, and I know there's logical explanations to sort of explain, but I don't think that Rom and Lita didn't seem to be acting like Rom and Lita to me. Now, granted, and I know everyone's going to say this, they're different. They would have changed since the end of Deep Space Nine, because they're different roles. Rom's no longer a Bajoran engineer working on the space station. He's the Grand Nagus. And Lita's no longer a Dabo girl. She's like the high clerk or whatever of Ferengi. But I remember reading a novel that took place after Deep Space Nine, that took place on Ferengi. It was about Rom sort of having to deal with the radical factions of the Ferengi that tried to, like, the whole book, actually it was like half a book, it was split in half, but still, half the book was all taking place on Ferengi, and so it didn't have any other characters from Deep Space Nine or whatever. It was just Rom and Lita and all them on Ferengi, and maybe Quark was in it too, I can't remember. But they were dealing with radical factions of Ferengi trying to, like, overthrow Rom because they weren't okay with all of the, the changes and reforms is the word I'm looking for, that Rom was. And that novel, Rom felt like Rom, and Lita felt like Lita. Well, here, they were trying to swindle Starfleet, and I don't know, something about, and just how they were playing, like Rom was playing dumb, and Lita was sort of Because really the whole point of Rom was that, and was something that the show had reinforced throughout its entire run, is that he wasn't a typical Ferengi, and he wanted to be an engineer and not just always worrying about, and also that he was no good at swindling people. Like, that was something that was, and that's why he failed as a Ferengi, but he was great as an engineer. And to be perfectly frank, that's kind of why I wasn't that big on the ending of Deep Space Nine that made Rom the Grand Nagus. Like, I know there was a new Ferenginar, that they were putting on these reforms. The women were gaining equality, and they were like going to take care of the environment and put taxes and form a senate so the Grand Nagus didn't have ultimate power, and all these reforms. And so, from that perspective, you could think, oh, it makes sense that Rom would be in charge. In fact, that's what the episode tried to sell you at the end of it. But I still don't buy Rom as in charge of all Ferenginar if they're still going to be motivated entirely by profit, because I think the show spent 7 years proving that Rom was no good as a salesman, at earning profit, and that's why he was better as an engineer. So I'd never been okay with that ending of Deep Space Nine. But even that, as I said, that novel still made sense. Like, it was still focused on Rom trying to do what's best for Ferengi and having a good heart, fighting those Ferengis who were like the hardliners, who were more wanted to go the traditional way of swindling everyone. And plus, like, with Rom's reforms, I feel like the focus wouldn't be on swindling people as much as it was in this episode, particularly with Rom himself trying to swindle Starfleet. Now, granted, again, I that's why I preface this with saying that I know some people are going to disagree with me and have explanations on why I'm wrong, because I can hear it right now, because I know that's the case. But I couldn't help but feel this way, because I know what the counter argument to this would be is that, oh, well, it's not necessarily that Rom was trying to swindle the Federation or Starfleet. He just didn't want to deal with the rubes or whatever, because his culture, the Ferengi culture, wouldn't tolerate that, and so they were testing them by trying to swindle them, and then Freeman passed the test by swindling them back, and that's what earned their respect, because they earned the respect of the culture. And I get that. I get it. So I'm not saying this is like totally out of character for Rom, and Rom's acting completely out of character. It's not what I'm saying, because I get what they're laying down here. It just seems off to me. It just doesn't seem like Rom. It doesn't seem. In fact, I had to check the credits to see if they were voiced by the actors who played them, because it didn't even sound like them to me. And I don't think that's not a knock on the actors who have grown older, which I'm sure they have. It's been 30-something years since Deep Space Nine airs. It's nothing to do with that. It's the fact that their characters were acting differently. That why it didn't really sound like them to me. And of course Rom's bringing up baseball, which referenced that terrible baseball episode of Deep Space Nine. So they are doing some callbacks. But I could picture Rom as the Grand Nagus and still trying, still having to act like a Grand Nagus, so still having to appease the Ferengi's obsession with profit, but doing it in a way that feels more like Rom. In fact, when he's dealing with the Federation, they never bring up the fact that he lived and worked on the Federation station, actually worked close with Starfleet during the Dominion War, and has this close connection with the Federation. They never really bring that up. One can infer that is why Ferenginar is trying to join the Federation, which, by the way, is a huge step, and that is a huge thing in canon as well. They've stated multiple times that Lower Decks is canon, so I hope any further incarnations of Star Trek honor this. and show that Ferengi, even while we don't know if they'll succeed, maybe they won't be part of the Federation, but at least acknowledge they attempted it. I think I like that actually a lot. And I can buy that with Rom in charge because of Rom's close connection with the Federation. Although it would be a hard sell because Ferengi are, I don't know, it depends. If you go by Next Gen, they were playing it as like a kind of, I wouldn't say empire, but a, not just the one planet, a sort of, kind of like the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Empire. They span like a huge space, or the Cardassians, they span like several planets. And I had gotten the impression that, Next Gen in particular tried to portray them as a superpower, but then of course in Deep Space Nine they completely shrunk that and made it like they were wusses, even though they had starships that were kicking the Enterprise's ass in Next Gen. So there's, canon's not consistent on this, and that's fine. So yeah, but it would feel weird that this power would join the Federation. But then again, it's, as I said, Deep Space Nine kind of shrunk how much power they actually have. So ultimately, I can buy it, and ultimately, I like it. I don't know. For me, I wish that the scenes with Rom and Leeta felt more like Rom and Leeta. I'm not saying they were totally out of character, and I'm not saying I didn't like it. I did like it. It's just something felt off to me. And again, I know there's going to be tons of people who disagree, and that's fair. If you had a totally different perspective, you think I'm absolutely wrong that these were 100% Rom and Leeta, then that's good. Like, I respect that, but that is not how I see it, and it's not, however much you argue with me, it's never going to be how I see it. It's just the feeling I had as I was watching this episode. But I did like, getting into the storyline, I did like that Captain Freeman was a smart one. I think that's out of character for Lower Decks. Usually she's like the dumb one and does stupid things. And I like, and there could be an argument, because I did a list of ranking of all the Starfleet captains from, how good they are at their job, and I heard some people make an argument that Freeman should be at the bottom of the list because she's done some stupid things. And I never really like it when they portray her as really dumb. And so I like this portrayal of her, that she's actually the smart one. She's the one who figures this out. It's the Admiral guy who's being dumb, and this is the censors guy is what I call him. From the episode, he was like, the censors, are you making fun of me? Anyway, so I always think of him as, and so he's the perfect guy actually to have in this episode, to be the idiot and be like, dance for me. And then Freeman's like, every step of the way is saying, hey, they're playing you. This is how they're playing you. This is what's going on. This is exactly how they're playing you. And him being like, oh, no, it's fine. We just need to do this. And then when Freeman figures this out and swindles them and they earn their respect, I did like that aspect of it. And I did like it showed Freeman as being really good at her job. And so I wonder if this is going to pay off further down the line. But back to Rom, I should mention that the start of the episode had that scene with the Ferengi ship that was being attacked by that other ship that's been setting up this storyline all season, which I am still waiting for them to get to this. They're having with such big setup, the payoff better be good. But anyway, they did mention in that scene that Rom was forbidding illegal weapons selling and focusing on stuff. So it is showing that he's having reforms. And they don't mention it directly in this episode, but you see in this episode that all the Ferengi women are clothed, which is due to Rom's reforms. It didn't used to be this way, I think 10 years ago in this canon, when this is taking place, that they wouldn't have been. They would have been forced to be naked. So that's a drastic change in society, but it's normalized at this point, and that's thanks to Rom. I don't know. I just wish they would have gotten more into his good side. I don't know. That's just, I want it to be more like that book, which I actually think did a better job of portraying Rom as the Grand Nagus. But that's just me. I mean, it's a Lower Decks episode. It's got to be funny. It's only a half hour long, but still. Anywho, I want to talk about the Tendi and Rutherford storyline, because this is the one I kind of have mixed feelings about this, but for the most part, I really like it. I'm going to say something kind of controversial here, but I'm kind of on team... what are we going to say? Team Tenderford. Or Rendy. I kind of want to see him hook up. Especially after this episode. Like, before I was kind of iffy on it, but after this episode, I was actually hoping it would lead to them sparking a romance. But, to be fair, that would be very cliche. And so, by them not doing that and finding that they're absolutely more comfortable being platonic friends, was actually a better way. It was a less cliche, less predictable way to go. Also safer, because it doesn't change any of the character dynamics, so that's a knock against it in my opinion. But because let's shake things up, let's change the character dynamics. I think they have kind of been hinting at these two, because they used to spend so much time together in the first 2 or 3 seasons, especially the first 2. And they were really close, and there were some episodes where they were kind of hinting at it, will they, won't they, which I think they kind of toyed with when Boimler was watching that Ferengi program about everyone was a will they, won't they thing. And it seems like it was making commentary on the will they, won't they, but it seems like the end of this episode has firmly answered the they won't they? But then again, maybe later they'll change it and they'll toy with it some more. So that's the problem with it. But I actually like the storyline a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I thought it was pretty funny. I myself had moments like going out in public with a platonic friend and being mistaken as a couple, and how awkward that is. So I can relate to this and how weird it is. But I like how they were like pretending to be a couple, and they were first having fun with it, and they were like schmookums, and Mariner has this joke about, oh yeah, you totally sound like how couples, this is how real people actually talk. But they were sort of, they were having fun with it, but then they sort of hit on some things that got a bit uncomfortable, and it was obvious that, and which is why I kind of think there might still be a spark there, that I was hoping it would lead to a spark, because it was obvious it was uncomfortable, because it was hitting on things that were true, secret feelings that they didn't want to admit. So it's obvious there's something there, but it could be so buried underneath where it's not even worth exploring, or maybe it is. So it just toys with the will they, won't they thing more. But yeah, I did like how, and they portrayed this with the blushing. I love the blushing. Whenever they hit on something that was a bit too close to home, they just started blushing, like Tendi, they were doing, oh, we can share our toothbrush, and I'll wake you up from your sleep, and they were all having fun. But then Tendi hit on, oh, and then I'll walk around nude because we've seen it all before. And then they started blushing. And she was like, no, I love my husband. He's like, oh, I love you too. And then they both started blushing like hard out. But then the storyline got a bit ridiculous. And I'm not saying that is necessarily a bad thing. It's a Lower Decks ridiculous, comedy way, where they, the other Ferengi kept trying to push them with, it was a sitcom trope, but it seemed like it was almost like making fun of sitcom tropes. It was kind of parodying the tropes in a way, I feel like. because they just got more ridiculous and ridiculous. Where the Ferengis, at first they made him dress all snazzy, and they were. Tindy was, Rutherford was saying she looked good or whatever, and then they started blushing some more, and the thing that Tindy said, Rutherford said about, why does hearts represent love? It should be, kissing or green eyes, which was, again, this is like, to me, this is hitting on something deep, that he actually does find her eyes very attractive. And sees that as a kind of a symbol of love, and as soon as he said that, boom, she started blushing, hit on something uncomfortable. So I think there's something there. God damn it, I think that there's something there, and I still think they should explore it. And I know maybe some people would disagree, and in fact, I feel more about. I didn't really feel this way about their relationship. I thought, man, they shouldn't get them together. That would be dumb. Until this episode. This episode has changed my mind. But I don't know. I wouldn't be disappointed if they don't get together. But yeah, so the storyline got more ridiculous especially when they went to the. By the way, I love that they had a Starfleet themed restaurant. That was really cool. I remember taking my ex-wife when she was my girlfriend at the time, when she was from New Zealand. And of course, well, not from Australia, but from New Zealand, which is near Australia. And she's been to Australia, has relatives there. And I took her to Outback Steakhouse when she visited the U.S. and she found out how stupid that was. That's what made me think of this. But, and they had American-themed restaurants in New Zealand, too. I actually kind of like those. But anyway, so having a Starfleet-themed restaurant, I think, was a nice touch. But anyway, the whole thing about... this is obvious. This is when you take Lower Decks with a grain of salt. And I think it's totally fair for them to be this ridiculous. I don't have an issue with it. But when they had that other couple, it's like, throw them in the mines. This is the worst offense of Ferengi now by pretending to be a couple. I don't know. Maybe that was a bit too ridiculous for me. And then the fact that they had made them eat like naked chocolate figures of themselves, and you had to say something that you like about the other person. The lie detector chair is gonna, and so they're sitting there sweating, trying to say nice things about each other and being totally uncomfortable. Like, I don't know. This episode kind of lost me a little bit there, and especially when they were like, "Oh, you have to consummate your marriage in front of everyone." Oh, of course they're not going to see you, but they're going to hear you. You're in that booth. Like, I don't know. This maybe be a bit too ridiculous, over the top, and this is when I think maybe they're making this is a parody of other sitcoms, that they're not using a sitcom trope, they're more making fun of it by being totally ridiculous and over the top. Like, this is totally unbuyable. Like, I buy the alien dressing up as Mark Twain in 2 episodes ago and trying to and Freeman being Mark Twain. I buy that more than I buy this. But anyway, I think it's it's a parody, making fun of the sitcom trope, because it took it to an absurd extreme. But I did like the thing with Minnie Malou, who came in, and that's how they got out of it. They're like, "Oh, we love you." It's like, "You love me." And again, this is when it's totally ridiculous, unrealistic, when Minnie Malou was like, "Oh, those are 2 people who happen to be the best platonic friends." Like, nobody talks like that. But again, I think it's, making fun of that trope and just having it be ridiculous that way. So yeah, part of me thinks this is really stupid, but the majority of me really likes it. So, anyway, yeah, and of course, Minnie Malou being a foodie makes total sense. I mean, they completely introduced this character in the first season by saying he was obsessed with making food metaphors. So this is totally tragic. Although this food that he's eating wasn't regurgitated by his mother, so I don't know how much he would really like it. But anyway, so the Boimler stuff, I mean, some of the stuff with him watching TV, I don't know. I didn't think it was that funny. It was okay. It was definitely commentary on the culture, and I was like, "What is this? Like a flat, hollow novel?" As they know what TV is, and why and Ferengi are like really up there in having holosuite programs. So why would they have TVs? Why aren't they along with the Federation using hollow novel programs? But anyway. Who's to say? I know what you would say. Who's to say they don't have them both? But it still seemed a bit, I don't know, trying to be too much like modern times. But whatever, it was fine. The fact that he wanted to go and obsessed and go to like 40 different places, but ended up staying in a hotel or watching TV the whole time was kind of funny. But it was fine, whatever. And then the Mariner stuff. I don't know. This is when in my intro, and I talked about something that felt repetitive to me. It's this Mariner thing this is feeling a bit repetitive about her hating the fact that she's promoted, and she hates the fact that Ransom is being nice to her, and she just wants to go out and get drink and start bar fights for no reason. And then her friends telling her to that she's being ridiculous, especially when she was like, oh yeah, they're making me being really nice and making me feel part of the team, and she's like, oh my, and her friends like, oh my god, that sounds terrible. But I don't know. I don't know. I think. I really feel like they already resolved this, honestly, in previous episodes. I think they resolved her moving past the fact that she hates being promoted or whatever, and the fact that she's still dwelling on it. I don't know. I feel like we should go beyond this by now. But there are aspects of like the aesthetics and what happens in the storyline I really like and I really find funny, particularly the bar fight. I thought that was hilarious when the guy was like doing everything he possibly could to de-escalate. Like this big muscular guy, and his friend obviously was the one who accidentally backed into him. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, let me reimburse you for all that. And then Mariner starts picking a fight with him, and he's like, oh please, I'm just out here enjoying a casual night with all my other biker friends. And just really reinforcing the fact that Mariner's like has such an easy out, has a way to de-escalate, but she's going out of her way to pick a fight. That's a really terrible idea to do. So that was kind of funny. And I also like the memorial to the lost debt. Like they have a Dominion War memorial, but instead of memorializing those who lost their lives, it's more memorializing the lost debt. Which part of me is like, I think that's taking it too far, but on the other hand, when I think about it, Ferengi was not involved in the Dominion War, so they wouldn't have really lost that many lives in it. So they would have lost more money, and how they feel about debt and money and stuff or whatever. But I don't know. And it was still kind of funny, like when Mariner was talking to her friends, and they're just random Ferengi in the background, like crying and banging on the memorial. Why? It was a bit ridiculous. And again, because it's lower decks, like if something like Deep Space Nine or Picard or something like this, I wouldn't be okay with it because that would just be dumb. That would be going too far. But because it's lower decks, I'm willing to give them leeway because it's a silly comedy. But but overall, yeah. So overall, I wasn't that huge of a fan of that storyline, but it was okay. So anyway, my rating for this episode out of 10 is an 8, extremely good. I did really like I was thinking about giving this a 7, but I think it's better than a 7. Because there are some really funny parts, like the biker gang and whatnot. And I like the way it explores Ferengi, and you get the ins and outs of Ferengi. And I love the exploration of the Tendi Rutherford relationship. I think that was very clever, even though it got absolutely ridiculous towards the end. Part of me likes that, part of me not. But I still love the exploration of those two characters. Now I want to see them together. Is that bad? I don't know. I feel like most people would disagree with me on that. But anyway, I like that, and I like that Freeman was actually, they showed her actually being really good at her job and actually being the one to outwit Rom. I think that was really cool. But again, a lot of nits to pick and stuff that I wasn't that big on. I think they could have done a better job at portraying Rom. I think that Mariner's storyline was a bit repetitive and we didn't really need this. And the Boimler watching TV, I mean, that was fine, whatever. Anyway, so that's it for my review of this episode. I'll be back to cover Lower Decks next week and every week thereafter. Also check out my channel as I'm covering Star Trek The Next Generation as Season 1 and many more videos on many more Star Trek shows and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.